final coalition of the year, All in Cincinnati Equity Coalition meeting. My name is Denisha Porter, and I am the Executive Director of All in Cincinnati. For our newcomers here today, All in Cincinnati is a racial equity coalition working to dismantle racial inequities in health, housing, education, economic mobility, and justice to uplift and advance Black women here in Hamilton County. We are educating, motivating, and moving Black women to economic prosperity. So thank you so much for joining us today. Just some quick updates. I just really want to thank the core team and the coalition for being on this dedicated journey. Over the last 4 years, we have put into place our framework, Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. We have completed 100% of our Truth Pillar. We have not only created our own docuseries that highlighted maternal and mental health, we've also been able to be highlighted in the airport with our airport ad. We've been on busing ads. We've also had our own radio show, the All in Cincinnati radio show. We've been highlighted on Channel 12, Channel 5, and Channel 9. And we've been highlighted in the Herald as well as the Venue magazine. So we've completed all of the objectives and goals that we had for the Truth Pillar, really talking about narrative change and story change, really changing the narrative about Black women and showcasing Black women in Hamilton County. We have completed 100% of our Racial Healing Pillar, in which we started Cincinnati's National Day of Racial Healing in 2020, where over 1,500 people joined us for our first event, where we highlighted local leaders talking about policy and system change. And since then, we've had racial healing circles with businesses, nonprofit organizations, and healthcare settings. And to date, we've had over 3,500 people attend all of the Cincinnati's National Day of Racial Healing combined. And then finally, with our transformation pillar, where we make our policy and systems changes. We created a 5-year strategic plan with all the activities that were highlighted in the All in Cincinnati report, which included over 63 activities. And to date, we have put in place over 51 of those activities. So we've completed over 80% of our transformation pillar in 4 years and hoping to complete the remaining in the next year. So again, I honor the core team and I honor you as coalition members for doing all of that work. None of that work would have been possible without you. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I really appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. So with that, we will start our candidates forum. And before we get started, I really wanted to thank all of our partners. And so that includes the Women's Fund, the League of Women Voters, Urban League of Greater Southwestern Ohio, the Health Collaborative, BI3, Cincy Travel, Youth at the Center, and the Women's City Club. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I will turn it over to Alicia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alicia Miller, and I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Fund. I'll be moderating the discussion today. So we wanted to start off with introductions. So we'll have 30 seconds for each introduction for each candidate. If you could each name who you are and why you are attending this event, and we can start with Anna Albee.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Albee. I'm running for Cincinnati City Council. I come from a gun violence prevention background. I've been leading Moms Demand Action here locally and working closely with City Council and the mayor. And for me, talking about gun violence prevention and community safety, it comes back to, are people being paid living wages so they can afford a roof over their head, fresh food on the table, access to healthcare, which includes reproductive healthcare and mental health care, and are we investing into community programs? So thank you all for having me today.
Thank you. And one thing I forgot to mention, if you candidates, if you take a look at Sean Jeffers' screen, there will be a timer there for you. So if we could next hear from Councilmember Reggie Harris.
Good afternoon, Reggie Harris, current City Council member, budget chair chair of Budget and Finance. I'm here because I over the course of my career and on council have done lots of great work with many members of this coalition, and I'm looking to continuing the work, centering people of Cincinnati so that we grow equitably and we thrive.
Thank you. Councilmember Scotty Johnson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for having this forum. I am a current member of Cincinnati City Council running for re-election. I'm the chair of Safety and Governance Committee. I am here because this coalition is very, very important. We have to make sure that all voices are considered and all voices are heard. And it is imperative to make sure, especially the underrepresented, for way too many years, the Black woman is heard crystal clear. So, and all of the other organizations that are represented here this afternoon. So it is a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to making sure we continuously move the needle when it comes to equity in every arena in the city of Cincinnati. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Councilmember Liz Keating.
Hello, I'm Liz Keating. I've been on City Council since 2020, really focusing my time on housing, building safe neighborhoods, and fighting for childcare. I am the only mother of young children on council and on the ballot, and I am here because I think it's incredibly important that we build different coalitions to be able to create a better future for our kids. And I'm really proud to be able to join this discussion and build those coalitions to move ourselves forward. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Councilmember Mika Owens.
Hey everyone, so excited to be here. Councilmember Mika Owens. I am from Cincinnati, born and raised as a Black woman. I raised my son here in the Avondale community, gone to school here, all of those things, invested my life here, have organized here, and so excited to be able to represent you on City Council, where climate, environment, and infrastructure is the committee that I get to chair. But every single day I think about systems change and how policy impacts that. And so it's an enormous opportunity to be with thought leaders like yourselves to get to the true essence of why we are all here.
Thank you. Councilmember Victoria Parks.
Good afternoon. I'm really happy to be here. I am Victoria Parks, President Pro Tem of Cincinnati City Council. Currently, in my former life, I was County Commissioner for 1 year. I am pleased to join the Women's Fund because I have partnered with you guys for years. You do such important work. I've been with you since before the Cliff Effect. And as a Black woman, and what you guys stand for, your mission is so important. We all know that when you raise Black women, the entire community will come up. So I am with you, and I always have been. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Seth Walsh.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Seth Walsh. In December, I was appointed to fill Congressman Greg Landsman's vacant seat on City Council, and I'm running for a full term now on City Council myself. Prior to this, I was working in the neighborhood of College Hill, helping lead the redevelopment efforts along Hampton Avenue. I take great pride in the work that happened there because it was truly a community-led initiative for 20 plus years. Those who were part of the infamous backyard barbecue that began the development are still part of this neighborhood. But I believe we can do that for all of Cincinnati. One of the most critical things I learned in College Hill is the only way you can truly be successful and make sure the community is still there at the table as you're seeing success is being part of conversations like these, reviewing the questions ahead of time. These are some of the most thought-provoking questions we've had in these forums, and I'm really excited to be here today. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. So let's move on to the questions. You all will have 90 seconds to answer each question. And like I said before, you can see the time either on Sean Jeffers' screen or in the top right-hand corner. I will notify you at 90 seconds if you go over that you are at time. I didn't do that yet, but I will be doing that for the remainder of our time here. So we'll go ahead and get started. Our first question is, there are vast discrepancies in life expectancy based on what zip code you live in the city of Cincinnati. Some parts of the city are thriving, and yet others struggle with issues such as maternal mortality, gun violence, or accessible, affordable housing and healthy food. What would you like to see embedded more systemically at the city to address these discrepancies, specifically for Black women, and how will you work to achieve that? Councilmember Harris, would you go first?
Absolutely. So I want to take a step back and I want to think about our larger budget structure and the Futures Commission and what we are able to do when we think about filling our deficits. So much of our city spending is about Band-Aid solutions, deferred maintenance, or reacting to a problem. We have not gotten to a place where we have a budget where we're thinking about proactive investments in systems that are able to impact these larger systemic issues. What are the financial supports that the city can put in place to support women-owned, Black-owned businesses, right? We partner with organizations and we support organizations that do that work, but our city dollars don't go to that work as much as I would like. When we think about investing in economic development and growth, how do we use city dollars to spur and then provide that sort of carrot for the private sector to say, hey, these are our values. We're doing that with the tools that we have, I believe, and I feel good about that, but on a limited basis. But with more dollars and with the opportunity we have with the sale of our railroad, with our Futures Commission, I want to get to the place where we are leading, putting cash in deals. When the city, we put cash in deals, we can ask more of individuals and of corporations. And so that is going to be my focus on Reelect, is to take the work that we're doing and to expand it so we can be more proactive.
That is time. Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Reggie touched on a lot of it. We are as a city, we are looking into, we've started to move the needle somewhat when it comes to making sure that women-owned and Black-owned businesses are being considered. We have to make sure, though, that we've got legislation in place to incentivize, as Councilmember Harris talked about, the private sectors also to be an assist in moving that needle. We, as a city, are, like I said, we are trying to make sure that that is at the forefront. Equity is at the forefront of everything that we do. And we have to make sure that we've got legislation in place to make sure that all factors are considered. And for far too long, our Black women have been left out, or they've been considered second when it comes to business and opportunities. So we as a council have talked about it, but we are going to make sure we are about it, making sure that those persons and those businesses are at the forefront when it comes to equity.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Keating?
Yeah, so one of the projects that I've been working on, and we're getting closer and closer to coming to fruition, is looking at housing and childcare together, and particularly mixed income housing, so we can help desegregate our city, not just on race, but also socioeconomic, and be able to build more housing opportunities in all of our neighborhoods, including our wealthier neighborhoods, where you do have that longer lifespan. But one of the aspects of that is what we're looking at, how to incentivize and build childcare centers within our housing developments, so that we can have a safe, stable place for kids 24/7, so that we can remove the barrier for people to be able to go to work, particularly in our second and third shift workers, and have stable childcare around the clock, but also be able to help and support our childcare centers, because we know it is an industry that is dominated by Black women, and they do not make enough money. They do not have enough support and enough stability to be able to build stronger businesses to allow more people to go to work, more paychecks going home, but also create more stability for our daycare workers, so that they can actually afford to go to work, because the pay is so low. And a lot of, and there aren't housing opportunities in the neighborhoods where the childcare centers are. So being able to take that holistic approach in two of our biggest challenge areas of housing and childcare, and working on them together, is one of the projects that I'm really proud of working on, and hopefully have some big announcements coming soon.
Thank you. Councilmember Owens.
Thank you for the question. I'd love to see how data is rooted more systemically in our decision making. And I believe it's a framework that we still have to build out. And it starts with the expertise of folks and organizations that are in this room, but it has to be accountable to numbers in order for us to understand accountability and progress. And once we get the data, we then disaggregate the data so that we know in terms of service delivery and to the points that Councilmember Keating was making, like we have to build the framework. And so I'm really excited to put this at the top of my priority list in doing that. And it's leveraging the partnerships that are here to even get to that place.
Thank you. Councilmember Parks.
Thank you for the question. This speaks directly to the resolution that I wrote when I was at the county, where it talked about the health disparities and that your zip code, where you live depends on how long you live, which is totally unacceptable. We're all in this city. And so, like Reggie, Councilmember Harris said, we have begun to do the work to be able to address these things. The data, like Councilmember Owen said, we just got the results of the disparity study that the council before us had. It did not answer the questions that we wanted. It was not appropriate. It did not. It didn't take in it didn't ask the questions about Black women and the disparities. And so we are going to get that data. We got to do it again, just like they did at the county. And they're taking the steps in order to level the playing field. And that's just what has to happen. It's so important. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, thank you. This question is difficult to answer in 30 seconds because I think each area requires us to be able to dive in further. But we all know it from the baseline where the inequalities exist within the city of Cincinnati. One of the things that I've been diving in on those is to match it up with actual data and to take my experience in College Hill and say, here's the pots of money that College Hill used to become what you're defining as one of these thriving neighborhoods, and how are other neighborhoods performing? The data doesn't shock you if you live in Cincinnati, but it's heartbreaking to see it written out on paper like that. So one of the areas that I'm really focusing on is now going into these communities because I truly believe if you think you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So going to communities and having them actually talk to me about what the experiences like to work with the city and to try to achieve what their goals are and why they're not seeing the success with it. Because I think that starts to help us unwind the systemic issues at the city that are preventing us from being successful. Because to your point, it's heartbreaking to truly look at the data and see that the difference between living in Avondale and North Avondale is something like 15 to 20 years of life expectancy. That's just not okay in the city at all, period, full stop. Once you start to recognize these problems, you can actually start to say, these are the problems. And I think Councilmember Johnson has said this really well before, until you even acknowledge the problem, you can't solve the problem, then we can start to really dive in and solve it. Some of these I think we have to get creative about. Food access, for example. We have to recognize the days of having large-scale groceries in every neighborhood may be past us. That doesn't mean that we can't find creative ways to bring fresh food
FaceTime. Thank
every
you.
neighborhood.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question.
I think Anna didn't answer this one. Didn't answer question one.
I apologize. I didn't go through my list. Anna, please.
Yeah, no worries. Well, to kind of say what Councilmember Walsh was saying, this is a very big question for a very limited amount of time. So I know we're going to dig into each of these aspects, but just big picture to share for folks. When I started working and volunteering in the gun violence prevention space, I've always talked about a series of dominoes. Yes, we can absolutely legislate at the point when the gun is in the hand and something terrible has happened. However, the dominoes that fall before that is no access to food, no access to housing, you're not being paid enough to be able to afford the everyday necessities, right? If you think of like a Venn diagram of where these are issues, often that Venn diagram is just a circle, right? These communities that are struggling with violence, that are struggling with access to housing, are also struggling with food insecurity. And you can see the domino effect, just to take an example of community maybe that has been bulldozed and paved over in cement. Well, we know if there's not enough trees in the community, it's hotter, there's less, the air quality is poorer, which leads to worse health outcomes. So when we tackle each of these problems, these issues, we need to look at it holistically to see how they interplay and connect together. And I personally think that there are things the city can do. And one of the greatest things we can do is invest into the organizations on the ground who are doing the work. So I'm really excited from a city perspective of investing into funds like the Boots on the Ground Fund and the Safe and Clean Fund, which are community-led initiatives that help empower our residents to take on the issues they see in their own backyard.
Thank you so much. The next question is that many cities are facing financial challenges with tight budgets and the end of COVID relief funding. In light of this, how will you prioritize supporting Black women as a member of City Council? We will start with Councilmember Johnson.
Well, it's already been mentioned that we have to go back and redo our disparity study. The disparity study did not address the issues, as Council President Pro Tem Parks pointed out. It did not address those issues that concern Black women. To prioritize Black women, we have to first make sure, as I said earlier, we got to make sure that we understand that that this group has been overlooked far too long, first of all, across this country and here in the city of Cincinnati. Once we prioritize and make sure that we admit that we have made mistakes when it comes to overlooking Black women, then we can start to address some of those issues. One of the things that I'm going to steal from Councilmember Harris on this with the carrot. One of the things that we can do as a city to put the carrot out there is to make sure we bring incentives to make sure that we bring incentives to the group, to the issue, to make sure that Black women businesses are considered. I think that's something that has been overlooked far too long. And now with that carrot of incentives, we will be able to address those difficult circumstances and situations that we have gotten ourselves in as a city.
Thank you. Councilmember Keating?
Yeah, I think this is a very big and complex issue. And I think one of the things is working with other levels of government to help with the funding, but also looking small and seeing where local government, where the city can play. And I think one of those roles is looking at our rec centers and how we can create more opportunities for our children to remove the childcare barrier for the women and mothers to be able to go to work. The city has childcare programs. We actually provide before and after school care at CPS schools, but we are not operating at capacity right now, and it's actually revenue generating from the city. So once we put in that initial investment, it's self-sustaining throughout time, but we don't do it. Some schools don't start until 9:30 in the morning. Some schools get out as early as 2. That is not a timeline that's conducive to a working parent. Society was set up to have a two-parent household, one who is the breadwinner and one who stays home to manage the household and raise the children. That is not how real life is. And so being able to look at what we can actually impact, and I truly believe it's investment in our rec centers to be able to have these safe and fun, stable places for our children, and particularly our childcare programs, and also focused on our childcare programs before and after school at CPS schools and the summer programs when school is out. So there's also a place for kids to be throughout summer, so parents and particularly mothers can continue to work and bring that paycheck home.
Thank you. Councilmember Owens.
Thank you. I think one of the most important things to flag in this question is the end of COVID relief funding. And so when we're looking at the most vulnerable people in our community as it relates to housing, making sure we're reducing eviction rates is super important and at the top of the list, particularly when we know that Black women and moms are most disproportionately impacted in this community. And so as a result of our impact award, where we're looking at eviction prevention and going upstream and data points in our city to help us prevent someone someone going in a homeless shelter, but it's also through our tenant bill of rights. And that means what are the local laws that we can codify to help people stay in their homes? And that includes access to counsel. This is something that cities are doing increasingly across the city, and it's something that local governments can do to help in this housing space. And so when we provide an attorney to be able to navigate for someone going through an eviction proceeding, again, Black women that we expect them to send their children to CPS schools and learn, and they're couch surfing, this is what we have to do. And these are the local laws that we can impact. And so I'm really excited to be leading on that work. And it's going to be super important as the ERA money, the rental assistance money is running out, right? And so it's now time to build capacity within the systems and the tools that we can use, namely the court system, which also should include and will include access to mediation services to even prevent going to court.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Parks.
Thank you for this question. My colleagues have hit on so many important points, but what I will bring to the table is this. As decision makers and policy makers, the best thing that we can do at City Council is to write policy, to make sure that women are at the top of the lens through which we look. And we have done this in some things. You know, we've been here less than 2 years. I believe that we are a very productive council, and we get things done. So I'll give you an example. You know, we are building the convention center district, and so we have written into our policy that if you want to do business with the city, then your workforce has to look like our population. Vice Mayor Kearney and I, we've been working on what's called Jobs Futures. This is where we are going to train the workforce. We're not just talking about jobs. We are talking about careers, and that is what Black women need. You know, not just this under $10 and up to $15 in order to take care of your family and to turn your life around. A career, what they are good in, I was just getting started. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think about this from my experience in College Hill around small businesses, and the city does an amazing job of helping get small businesses launched. And then we do a really, really poor job of helping small businesses stay launched and stay successful. And over the last several years, we've been struggling as a region, as a city, as a nation, with the fact that small businesses are trying to come out of COVID. And so it was only recently when I started having conversations with small businesses, particularly Black small businesses that are already behind the 8 ball, about how the city can truly help them, did I start to understand that that was a problem that we were facing. And so I think the most critical thing as a member of council is to ask Black women how we can be supportive, and then to trust them when they tell us what the issues are where we can really have that positive impact. I think my colleagues have mentioned several great ways. I think to my earlier point, I'm not bold enough to say I'm the smartest person in the room about this, but I do think it's really, really critical that we convene, we sit, we listen, and we trust.
Thank you. Anna Albee.
Yeah. So I think this is a great question. Folks have invoked the idea of data, and we have the data to show the neighborhoods in Cincinnati that have the highest poverty rates, and we know exactly what proportion, the demographic breakdown is. So it is no mystery to me that Black women are feeling the squeeze when the communities in our great city that are struggling the most with poverty are the ones that have a larger Black community, higher percentage of Black residents. So I get that, and I can feel the pain. The city has a lot of great resources to support new businesses, Black and female owned businesses, which I think is great. But then for me, my day job, I'm a communicator. So one of the things I bring into this perspective is, okay, we've got this resource over here. What are we doing as a city to get that resource out into the community, helping guide people through the bureaucracy of the city? When you all have day jobs and you're trying to start your own business, it's really hard to navigate that. So I personally would love to do more kind of workshops in the community where we are, helping residents one-on-one, guiding them through those type of the paperwork and whatever's needed to apply for those. And then I feel like there was more mentioned here around, what the city's been doing around building more housing and tackling food insecurity. All of that can come together, but it's going to be really tough, and it's going to take some hard decisions on the part of council to decide where to invest. And I personally think that we got to look directly at those communities that are struggling the most and invest straight into there.
Great. And lastly, we have Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, I really appreciate this question. And it was really because of the ending of the federal COVID dollars why it was a no-brainer to champion alongside the mayor our cities for financial empowerment. That is our blueprint for closing the racial wealth gap between Black and white Cincinnatians. And specifically in that financial blueprint, we lifted up and sought funding for, and with the support of my colleagues, approved a guaranteed income pilot that we're actively working on with Cradle Cincinnati and the Urban League, and All In Cincinnati being our policy lead, to target Black women who are either caregivers or mothers for the guaranteed income pilot. Child baby bonds, medical debt relief, making sure that while we have the resources and recognizing this balance of both fiscal responsibility, but knowing that at some point we have to make hard decisions about investing in people. The data shows that when you invest in Black women, whole communities rise. It has been studied in every which way, and it is solidly conclusive that it is one of the best return on investments a community can make. And so we will continue to fight to fund these pilots, to expand these pilots, and to make sure that that impact can be felt.
Thank you. So this question will be on economic mobility. As a Cincinnati council member, how will you increase the economic security and mobility of vulnerable families and workers, especially women of color facing barriers to employment? And we will start with Councilmember Keating, please.
So I think one of the looking at the barriers to employment, and you've heard me talk about childcare a lot, and I'm going to go into detail on one of the other projects I'm working on around housing and childcare. And I think this will create the pathway to home ownership. So we are looking at creating housing opportunities, working with some of the state funds that were passed in the last state budget and local dollars to be able to create housing opportunities for women, particularly women who are working in childcare, with a long-term plan of creating more in-home childcare opportunities. So you have the business support to create the in-home childcare opportunities that then allows people in the neighborhood with children to have a safe place for their kids. They can go to work, but also have that business model to help offset the cost of a mortgage and that pathway to home ownership. We are actively working on that pilot program right now, looking at funding sources locally and with the state governments, looking at different ways that we can work with other models. But I do continue to believe that childcare is the biggest barrier for economic mobility. And until we create more childcare options, support our childcare industry, and particularly our childcare workers with higher pay, with retention bonuses, with the ability to create more job stability, we will never be able to get more people going to work and paychecks going home for the economic mobility.
Thank you. Councilmember Owens?
Thank you. I think it's a variety of pieces. One of which is, building a strong workforce infrastructure with partners, some of which I'm sure are on this call, as we're looking at, projects that are going to impact our region, like the bridge, that's a workforce opportunity. And so how intent can we be in making sure women are a part of this pipeline of trades? And so that is a conversation that I think we certainly should have. Childcare, absolutely. How are we incentivizing projects and communities that are going to be hyper focused on local amenities? I think that's huge. Transportation, of course. And so when we're having conversations around policies that incentivize housing, workforce housing along transit lines, that's an important part of this equation as well. And then, finally, making sure that we're addressing the living wage in this city, and that corporate partners are stepping up to that. You have some people that are offering $20 as a starting pay, but let's make sure we are truly thinking about what the living wage needs to be, and people are stepping up to that.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, so I think about this through two angles. One is affordable housing, which is really critical and something that this council has taken a very proactive stance on, and we must continue to work. We put a lot of money, over $112 million, into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but now we have to make it possible to actually build this affordable housing and incentivize building this affordable housing around the city of Cincinnati. It's a big reason why I wanted to come to city council in the first place. I've had this experience in College Hill, the good of it, of actually building it, and the bad of it, of the headache of trying to get it built, and how difficult it can be, and how the city can get in the way of it, and what we have to fix to make that a reality. Because we need more affordable housing in the city of Cincinnati, and it's such a critical step, because if you're spending all your time and all your money worried about the housing insecurity, you can't even get to that next layer. That next layer is adding economic development through small businesses and supporting small businesses, and breaking down that barrier and getting creative about how we can actually allow small businesses to take over again in neighborhoods. The days of small businesses needing 2,000 plus square feet in businesses are days of past. But we still have these 2,000 square feet business spaces. And so we have to figure out as a city, and I think we've been incentivizing it through the Main Street program. We're working at College Hill on the Our Shop program, how you can have multiple small businesses existing in spaces that are that size, making it viable for people to get started. Now, why this is critical is because we have so many mom and pop small businesses that are working out of their house right now that just need a space to be able to go into, and this can become such an incredible
time. Thank you. Anna Albee?
Yeah, thanks for the question. A lot has been mentioned. I wanted to zoom in on a couple of different things. So I think building the pipeline, starting with job training, the city of Cincinnati has a program called Career Pathways, where we're trying to connect youth to employment. The unions have a Building Futures. So I think looking at new ways to build kind of the pipeline of job training to connect folks to jobs early on, as well as just being more, encouraging private companies also to think about apprenticeship programs and opening up that, and being, thinking differently around hiring, based on whatever thing is on your resume, right? So very typically, there's these job requirements, that are on the resume that maybe aren't as needed for the actual job being done. So how can the city ourselves, think in more deeply about when we're putting requirements on a job description, what's actually needed, so that we're not, having some type of discrimination that we're not aware of just by throwing something on there that's not needed for that job, and how can we encourage our corporate partners to do the same. Also supporting programs like Mortar, who are supporting kind of that incubation of new businesses. And one thing I forgot to mention in my last answer is, when we talk about those small business support that the city provides, making sure that is inclusive of home-based businesses. So Councilmember Keating's mentioned childcare, for example, also like a kitchen, that making sure that is also eligible for support.
Thank you. Councilmember Parks.
We work on that every day in this council. It is at the top of our priority list. The programs that we have over in Avondale, where we have invested in the children with the savings accounts. And what I'm really excited about is where we are paying off medical bills. So that's going to help tremendously. I have personal experience with what that can do to a family. In these communities, to listen to them. We have to listen, and I really liked what Seth said, to listen and to trust what they're saying, because so many times we believe that we have the answers for people without even asking them. But as a Black woman, and one who has, I have a plethora of experience just about at every level. So I just know that opportunity is what's best. And what's special about Cincinnati is that we have so many different programs that will help. And so it is the city's responsibility to discover what they are, get those that are lined up to our priorities, and make sure that they are funded.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, so I actually want to approach this question a little differently and talk about how we're defining vulnerability. Because there are a large number of Black families and Black women who are highly educated and who have paying jobs, but because of Black tax and other barriers, find themselves in spaces of vulnerability. And so I think one, it's incumbent upon city structure to literally invite people to participate. This past September, my office, we held the first Black Developers Conference in the history of the city of Cincinnati. And an overwhelming of the 520 attendees, I think we ran the stats, I think 37% were Black women who are property owners and we're looking for tools to grow that space, right? But also are subjected to positions of vulnerability, right? And so it's not just, to me, making sure that we're thinking about folks who are at the lowest sort of socioeconomic status, but that folks who have made significant investments in their own lives and still find themselves not being able to access opportunities. And so that's what the Vice Mayor and President Pro Tem Parks are doing with the equitable development, what Councilmember Walsh is doing around bonding, is that we are literally inviting folks who are traditionally not invited to participate and to participate in the economic sphere.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson?
Councilmember Harris took my thunder, but let me build on that. We're talking about, when we talk about barriers, we have to make sure that as a city, we are providing every opportunity possible to make sure those barriers are either done away with or marginalized. So that comes with legislating with compassion, changing the dynamics, even how we think about legislating. And we have to make sure in that compassion, with legislating with compassion, we're thinking outside the box and going and inviting those groups of people to the table to educate us. Because we sit on that dais does not mean that we have all the answers. We're trusted to lead, and that I believe we've done a good job doing that. But we have to make sure that we are changing the dynamics on how we think and changing a mindset to say we need to go and get the people and bring them to us so we may learn how to lead in that arena. And when it comes to Black women businesses and Black women being the most vulnerable, as Reggie pointed out, we got to change the dynamics to say that we no longer will allow this specific group to be the vulnerable ones and remain vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to the topic of education. So this question will be, how can the city use its resources to support the development of youth? And I will start with Councilmember Keating.
So I'm gonna just sound like a broken record again, because it comes down to what we have in our rec centers and particularly with our childcare and the early childcare education. We have the ability to create that foundation with kids in the earliest years, creating that safe space within our rec centers. And one of the projects that we are working on right now, it actually launches this Saturday, is our esports program. Esports is a way that a lot of tech companies are hiring kids who are really good at gaming and without a college degree, and being able to get kids into gaming, which it's very expensive to get into, and so not a lot of kids are. And so we've been able to raise about $150,000 to be able to buy the gaming equipment, to be able to get kids into gaming, working with our startup ecosystem to teach kids the skills. It's something fun and interesting to do, but also building up the skills to get into tech jobs, which are very high paying jobs within the city. So you're creating that talent workforce but also creating a new career pipeline, but also doing it in a fun and exciting way to learn and build new skills to create that better future. And we're doing it at our rec centers, and we're starting in our rec centers within West End, Avondale, and College Hill. And we launch in partnership with UC this Saturday. And I'm really, really excited because it's something we've been working on for a year and a half.
Councilmember Owens.
Yes, thank you. One of the most important roles we have as a city is allocation of our budget. And so when we're looking at things like career pathways, which we invested over $1 million into, to go beyond rec and fire and police cadets, but to also include, public service jobs that young people need exposure to. And so investing in opportunities like that. It's also through our human services and leverage fund dollars that we can leverage partnerships with folks who are hiring youth that are also giving us multiple benefits like Groundwork Ohio River Valley when we're looking at climate change, the impact that it has on communities, but also making sure we are putting equity as a pillar in that, meaning those who are most disproportionately impacted by climate change, Black communities, low-income communities. And so when we're investing in young people to now be the stewards of the environment and paying them to do these jobs in community, that is a full circle benefit. So these are just some of the ways. I also think about just kind of moving forward opportunities around development. And when we think about third spaces in communities, in addition to rec centers, traditional structures, how are we making sure we're creating these third spaces in communities that are all about climate resilience, of course, but also spaces where people can gather and young people feel included and safe.
Thank you. Councilmember Parks, please.
Yes, thank you. I often say that our jobs as community leaders, as council members, anybody from the president down to the president of the PTA or the lodge, your local lodge, we have one job, and that is to preserve what is good, the lessons that we have learned over the years. And the next thing is that we have to work in order to leave this world a better place for the future, for those that come behind us. Right now, it's the youth. It's really my passion. And last year, I launched what I call Girls in Government. So we sent out applications and we gathered 40 young ladies. They were aged from 12 to 18 and brought them into City Hall. I think Denisha was there, or somebody, where we spoke to them, we let them know that they can do it. I want them to know that that they are leaders. I want them to learn to assess their power, that they are a part of this democracy and to use their power. So that's my passion, to grow leaders and for them to understand government and that government does not work without them. So in December, we're taking them to Columbus.
Okay, Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, when I think back on my upbringing, my focus on my education, I think about the privilege that I came from, which that was the only stress that I had growing up. And I think recently I just had a conversation with my mom about how thankful I was that how much care she put into wallpaper she put in my room. I was very privileged with that. When you look around the city, there are communities. There are many communities that is education is not the highest priority that they can have because they're so worried about housing or food insecurity or gun violence, name it. We need to have thriving neighborhoods. We need to invest in making sure all of our neighborhoods are thriving, not just a select few. Because when we have these thriving neighborhoods, we really invest in them, then we can have the youth be able to focus on education, not have to worry about the trauma that exists the moment they step outside that door, or even the trauma that's existing when they're inside those doors. Beyond that, I think there's a really great opportunity with the city to help empower youth to get into entrepreneurship, because that then creates that pathway. It gets them excited to go learn, see how they can evolve into whatever the next phase in life is going to be. But it all comes down to a thriving community because that's where the city is going to be thriving the best.
Hey, Anna.
Yeah, thanks so much for this question. The concept or the topic of youth development is something that means a lot to me, especially, again, coming from the gun violence prevention advocacy space. Big picture, in Cincinnati, violent crimes are down, but youth-involved shootings are up. And that's really concerning because not only are the folks kids being shot, younger, the people doing the shooting are younger and younger, right? We're having kids being shot and being shooters, and that's really troubling. So if you think about kind of what systemically can we do to help turn the tide on that, it is investing into our youth development programs. One of the great community partners we have is Bishop Tate in Avondale, who through his ministry does a lot of youth mentoring. He will provide kids with food, be a safe place. And, you know, in April of this year, they went a whole month without a youth involved shooting. And to me, I look at that, I'm like, oh, that is like the gold standard of being able to provide that support, right? Having that stability where kids can come somewhere, be safe, have that mentorship, be fed, right? Have access to food. Councilmember Owens mentioned our leverage support through the city. I think that is absolutely vital where we are spending dollars on organizations who are tackling this head on. One of my favorite organizations is Q Kids Dance Club. They are an awesome group that a bunch of girls will go through and dance, and many of them go on to bigger and better things. But having that outlet for their passion and having that support network is just so important.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, so the two biggest, so there are a few areas in which the city has direct impact on youth development. So I'm going to take this question pretty literally. Councilmember Keating talked about our recreation centers and the huge benefit and asset to this community. So as our continued investment in that program and making sure that they are shored up, and so fully supporting all the work she's doing there. It's our police and fire cadet program. The Vice Mayor and President Pro Tem Parks are working to, along with Councilmember Johnson, to fill the 2-year gap that one has between the end of the cadet program and their eligibility to take the exam, so that we have that continuity. And to be able to diversify that workspace. But then there's the Girls in Government program that's new at the Councilmember, President Pro Tem Parks has invested in, and we've increased the investment in that work. And then there's work that's going to happen out of the Black Developers Conference, where we're going to launch a real estate development program for CPS youth to introduce them to the spectrum of real estate and economic development at an early age. And so these are resources that, one, we have to protect and continue to invest in because they are historic programs. And then these strategic investments in both interest in government and economic development that we can support and build out. And that's our direct impact in conjunction with all of our indirect spending in terms of youth development and social service.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
A lot of it's already been said. Just been said. Our youth development, police and fire cadets, and then with the building and housing inspectors, they're also forming a career pathway where young people without college degrees can become building inspectors and home inspectors also. But, you know, having said all that, those are all dynamic things we are doing as a city. And I think this year we invested more money into youth jobs than is in the history of the city of Cincinnati when it comes to youth employment. But more than that, I've had the privilege of going to Woodward High School, and we've had listening sessions with young people. And young people, what we believe as elders sometimes, what young people need is completely the opposite. They want what we want. They want to be safe. They want to feel appreciated. And they were the driving force to make sure that they were the driving force to make sure we're addressing those concerns. So sitting at the feet of young people sometime is very beneficial to hear what they want, to hear that most of them really just want to be safe and be appreciated. And I think this council has done everything that it can to this point, but we got a lot more work to do.
Thank you. I'm going to move to the next question. The topic will be health. The question is, how will you work to reduce stigma around mental health and increase access to mental health services for Black women and young Black girls in particular? I will start with Councilmember Owens.
Thank you. I think one of the first things that we have to do, again, I truly believe that with collaboration, we can pretty much solve anything, particularly in this city where we're so well resourced. So one of the things I think is how do we become the best trauma-informed city? Because we know that ACEs is a problem. And so, and Cincinnati, we are at a high rate for that. And so when we're using things like that as our metric, is then what are the points where young people are interacting in our community, and how are we well resourcing them to be able to confront what ACEs looks like? And so that is mental health access in our schools and our rec centers, all of these places, public spaces where young people are. And so, of course, that also means building capacity within the system to be able to do that. And so we know that we need providers to be able to do that. And so when we're talking about educational institutions that can help fill that gap, this is the time where we start talking and building that infrastructure. So partnering and building capacity.
Okay, and then we have President Pro Tem Parks.
Thank you. I spent years at a domestic violence shelter, raising money for those funds. And I know that statistically, that 3 out of 4 women have experienced some kind of sexual assault. I think that it definitely affects them. So if not assault, then domestic violence in these things. And so we have to help women get through these things. What we're talking about is trauma. Mika mentioned ACEs. In our Cincinnati public schools, they have counselors and that kind of thing that go through with the kids. But you're right, there is still a stigma. So I think that as we just continue to realize that each one of us are human, and to recognize that we need help, and to bring the community. And I would say, I might say to bring mental health to a community center, but I've also been a teenager and I know that won't work. That they wouldn't think that's cool. But I think that it needs to be, we as a council need to bring it forward and fund it.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest, most critical things as leaders is to help break the stigma by being open and honest and talk about our own experiences. Personally, I go to therapy at least once a month. The waning month here, I've been going every week, because just having someone to support you and take care of your mental health is really incredibly important. And I think as leaders, being able to talk about this, talk about our experiences, that helps to break down the stigma, to show you can still do great things in this world while seeking mental health and treatment. That then carries over to the city of Cincinnati and how we treat our employees and how we encourage our employees to go seek mental health and to get treatment, go to therapy, et cetera. My office has been leading with the city this year to really dive in on this, make sure that our policies are the best they possibly can be, and improving where possible, such that employees don't necessarily have to take PTO. We're working on a process in which employees don't have to take PTO to get mental health treatment. What this will do is have more people getting and seeking mental health that will then break down the stigma even further and further out of the community. And hopefully other businesses will take the lead and follow us. But I think it's so critical as a city that we step up to the plate. And as leaders, we make sure people know our experiences, because taking care of your mental health is just as critical as taking care of your ankle if you twist your ankle, or your arm if you break your arm.
Anna Albee.
Yeah, thanks for this question. This fact often shocks people, that 2/3 of gun deaths are suicides. And having a gun in the home increases the likelihood of suicide by 5 times. And we know across Ohio, suicides among the Black population, Black residents, is on the rise, specifically for Black girls. It's rising more rapidly than for other populations. So this is a this is a concern. And I just want to ask, and if people can kind of nod or not nod, has anyone here tried to book a therapy appointment recently, other than Councilmember Walsh, who just mentioned it? Because I have, and it's really freaking hard. It's hard to find therapists here in the Cincinnati area. And it's even harder if you're looking for someone who identifies similarly with you. And in July, I attended an event hosted by the Community Engagement Collective that was specifically around the BIPOC mental and behavioral health provider resource. And it's a list of Black and Brown mental health professionals. So residents can meet with a therapist who reflects their identity, who they can feel that connection to. So I think what we can do to support initiatives like that, and then to have the conversations and be honest, like, hey, I tried to book a therapy appointment and I couldn't find one. Like, we need to have those conversations. And, I think making mental health more accessible through rec centers or city health centers, I think is a good first step.
Hi, Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, again, I think my approach to this question is going to be really literal because I really want to highlight what we can actually do at the city in this role. So first, I'm a clinical social worker and former family therapist, and so this is the work that I do. Last year, council led by the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Owens passed a resolution recognizing the impacts of mental health and trauma on young folks, particularly young Black folks. And so I think that that sort of verbal sort of affirmation of the reality is important. I'll be vague for this because we think this is really important. Council, we have embedded mental health professionals in various aspects of interfacing with the city because we often see people who are decompensating in their mental health. And so instead of just turning them away, there are resources that are available at various connecting points at the city. We've done that, but we don't talk about it for obvious reasons, but we want people to be able to really access those resources. We think of the organizations that we highlight in our committees. I think about Dr. Chantel Thomas and her practice, being a Black woman, a therapist that has a robust practice, and looking to her to be our expertise and thought leader in this space. The Managers Advisory Group that came out of the collaborative agreement, they used dollars to help support youth leagues that were experiencing violence become trauma-informed youth leagues. So when we think about our city resources and dollars, those are some of the things that we have done and will continue to do.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson?
Having been the lead crisis negotiator for the Cincinnati Police Department for 25 years, this is a very, very important subject matter. We have to first, and I can't remember who said it, we have to first be honest about the fact that everybody's dealing with something. Everybody on this call is dealing with something. And if you're not dealing with something, you're not being honest. And the first approach to getting resolved is being honest about where you are and what you're dealing with. When it comes to our Black women dealing with childcare, dealing with relationships, dealing with most unfortunately, too many of them being the head of household, having to hold everything down, that's just continuously causes this level of stress. And in our community, we have to be honest about the fact we're dealing with something. As a council, we have to take the stigma away so city employees feel comfortable talking about the stress. I know that the Cincinnati Police Department and the fire department now has trauma-enforced people that are dealing and helping them to helping them to address the trauma that they're dealing with. So in our community, we have to get rid of the stigma and have to make it something that is not stigmatized, but appreciated people's honesty.
Thank you. Councilmember Keating?
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Harris. This is a very big, complex issue that's impacting the entire country, and looking at what the city can do and what we have done. almost 3 years ago now, I voted and we put stimulus dollars, I believe it was $2 million into Children's Hospital, building the largest inpatient care for mental health for children. It's in our own backyard in College Hill. It's 130 beds. That helps parents have resources to be able to take their children who are dealing with trauma. The city has put money into the ARC program. It started off as a pilot and has grown. That's an alternative response to crisis. When we have mental health crisis and somebody calls 911, rather than sending a police officer, that's not always what they need. Being able to send a social worker, a mental health expert who is an expert in this field and is going to be able to respond to the actual situation that's needed, we are providing our citizens a much better service with what they actually need in that situation rather than creating more traumas. And that program continues to expand year after year as we increase the funding and we get better and better at that. Again, another pilot program that started in Cincinnati that has grown is Divert, where we work with the police department and women and helping women to have better responses to domestic violence situations and be able to provide the resources to women in need, and not just having a police officer respond and not being able to help. Being able to continue these programs where the city can help is going to have that ripple effect throughout the entire community.
Thank you. So next question is on the topic of housing. This is a two-part question. So first, what is your position on the Affordable Housing Amendment? And second, regardless of your position, how can we ensure that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is evolving and stays relevant to current housing needs? President Pro Tem Parks.
This question is very close to my heart. My stance on the Affordable Housing Amendment. I really fought to make sure that money went to those who needed the most, but I lost. What we have with this amendment, I know that what they want is the right thing. We are at a juncture right now where we have done more than any other council. We're working on it. We're getting this money in. And we also have the results of, what's it called, Scotty? I can't think of the study that's coming.
The disparity study.
Well, the disparity study, and also the guys is gonna, anyway, I'm messing it up and I'm losing time. With the trust fund, I'm really proud of that work. And the way that we will keep track of it is we will take a look at it every 3 years. So it's not something that we're just putting out there. We put into policy that we will take a look at it also.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, thank you. So during my tenure in College Hill, I built affordable housing, and I've seen firsthand the incredible impact it's been. I also know, again, how difficult it is to actually truly build affordable housing. The issues with affordable housing are not purely financial. This council, mostly prior to me getting here, but even during my tenure, put in over $100 million in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. There is a lot of money out there for us to be building affordable housing. And for that reason, I'm opposed to the Affordable Housing Amendment, because I believe it makes this false dichotomy that makes us believe that just passing this amendment will solve affordable housing. It won't. The issues we face are the zoning doesn't allow us to build it. We need to change the zoning. The city, it's not conducive and doesn't encourage or work to actually get these projects built. Anybody who's ever worked at the city will tell you their story of how the city negatively impacted making that happen, even for the best of intentions. We always end up in these situations where they get delayed endlessly, and sometimes it kills deals. And then, as Councilmember Harris mentioned earlier, bonding. We don't have enough developers in this city that can actually build housing, nonetheless affordable housing. We need to be able to create systems at the city that can help them get bonded and actually get to that level and shatter the glass ceiling. These are the really critical steps that I'm spending my time and energy on. This is why I wanted to join City Council, so we can actually tackle it and unleash the development around the city to make that a reality. that leads to how you evolve the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The first step is how do you get money in there and actually get real
Aye.
substantial money.
Thank you. Anna Albee?
Yeah, thank you. I always hope that I go after Councilmember Walsh or Councilmember Harris for this question, because I know they can rattle off the stats really well. So when it comes to specifically this issue 24, I don't support the structure, and because for one reason we are doing the work, the city of Cincinnati has cultivated a really strong partnership with the Cincinnati Development Fund, and through that partnership, over the past year, we've created well over 700 units for 60 area median income or below, with over 1,000 units at the 80 median income level and below, which is more than 3 times what the previous council did, or 5 times. I forget the exact stat. Someone will correct me later. So this council is putting in the work around housing to fund those projects, to incentivize that project. To what Councilmember Walsh said, we need to make sure our zoning keeps up, that we are making sure that our zoning codes allow for more mixed use, mixed income zoning, especially along transit routes, which is part of what the work the Connected Communities is doing. I also just wanted to highlight Councilmember Owens' great work on the Tenants' Bill of Rights and what we're doing to keep people in their apartments and making sure that landlords are acting in good faith and that we are protecting tenants. So I think all of that work is in place. We just need to ramp it up really fast. So I just want to emphasize that we have the structures in place.
Thank you, Anna. Councilmember Harris?
Yeah, so I'm opposed to issue 24 for a few very simple reasons. One, it's duplicative. We've established a framework that is working. It's too narrow in scope. We have a lot of big issues that we need to tackle. And it doesn't fold into the structures that we have created. I worked closely with a group of people who are bringing this forward. Before I was sworn in my first term, I was meeting with them on a regular basis and said that if we do our earnings tax increase just for housing, given our $500 million deferred maintenance, our $900 million pension liability, and our $30 million operating deficit, that would be too narrow. It is, it's a new housing development with a sinkhole in front of the housing development doesn't, as Councilman Johnson say, move the needle on progress. I want to reiterate, we are doing incredible work. And I know that it's a terrible space, this crunch that we are in, but the fact that the city between 2017 and 2021 only built 59 units of housing affordable at 30% AMI or lower, 59 in 5 years. We have funded 125 in 1 year. 125 in 1 year from the structure that we have put in place. And we continue to add $5 million annually, our V-ticket contribution, our short-term tax rental contribution. For the first time in this history of the city, we have an affordable housing policy.
Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Harris laid it out. To be quite honest, I don't think issue 24 addresses all the necessary components. We as a council, like it's already been said, $112 million in the fund. That's still not enough. It's difficult, really, it's difficult to believe that you are doing everything you can and you still see the number of people that are homeless, that are fighting to stay in housing. But this council has done more than any other council combined. We're going to continue to make sure, every last one of us ran on housing. So the accountability to make sure housing stays at the forefront is what we're going to do. It's difficult as a politician to say, trust us. But I think in a year's time, you've seen what we've done and what we're going to try to continue to do. Another issue to deal with housing, which if I'm so graced to get back to council is I will be leading on legacy home ownership to make sure those homeowners that have been in the community for a specific amount of time, their taxes don't increase with development. We want development, but we don't want development with displacement.
Thank you. Councilmember Keating.
Yeah, I think a few of my reasonings have been mentioned as well, but I think one way to think about it that I haven't heard yet is, the city has a budget deficit. We have a massive budget deficit. We're going to have a lot of cuts coming up. If we have a tax increase this significant, but it is only selected to specifically housing, we may build a bunch of housing units throughout the city, but that's all we have. We have no investment into things that are going to actually help with economic mobility. So we will have a place for people to live, and then no investment in anything else, no investment in workforce development. We talked about already about apprenticeship programs to help people get into these jobs, especially with all the economic development coming up. We will have no money left over to invest in childcare, to be able to remove barriers so parents and caregivers, and particularly mothers, can go to work and get paychecks coming home. We will have no money to be able to invest in these mental health programs that we just talked about, like ARC and Divert. We will have no money to divest in some of the sustainability work that Councilmember Owens is working on, where we can create healthier environments throughout all of our neighborhoods. We will have no money left over to be able to do all these things to help create safe neighborhoods and more job opportunities to help people move up and get higher paying jobs, and then those paychecks going home to be able to create better opportunities and futures for our kids. If we direct all the money into one spot and not take that holistic approach, we have still continued to fail to do our jobs to create that economic mobility and brighter futures for our kids.
Councilmember Owens. Councilmember Owens?
So I think everything has been said. I will just state this very, very clearly. Issue 24 is not debating on whether or not we need affordable housing. This is a council and a mayor who is quite clear on that being a top priority. So that's why we've been doing all of the things around the first part of housing, which is stabilization, keeping people in the house that they are in. That's why that work is so critical. And it's about making sure we have the resources to do that. And going to Councilmember Keating's point around the budget, this is an earnings tax increase that goes for one issue. The city has several issues to deal with. Access to counsel, mental health, how do we employ young people? We've named all of the things. And so it would be a grave misstep for us to even think about increasing taxes without thinking about the responsibility that we have for everything in this city. So for me, and also the points have been said, we are making progress, and it is not something that is going to happen overnight, but it is steady, it is strategic, and we've got plans in place, and we've seen progress as a result. Even the $5 million that's going from our waterfall part of our budget process that is going into the housing trust fund. So we've got the pieces in place. We also have to think about how we increase stock and stabilize. So I'll just finally say this. It's also about the mixed income development that we want to see. Sorry, thank you.
Oh, no, it's fine. Thank you. So we're going to move on to justice. And the question will be, what plans do you have to work with police to uphold transparency and accountability? And we will start with Councilmember Walsh for that question.
Yeah, thank you. I see Iris Rowley's on this call, so I want to make sure to kind of start by saying, because of incredible work by leaders like Iris Rowley, over the years, we have come so far as a city. In terms of increasing and upholding transparency and accountability for police. At the end of the day, police are public servants, just like us elected officials, just like anyone who works in the city of Cincinnati. It should be our job as leaders of the city to continue to push for that transparency and accountability that is so critical. I think back to my background in College Hill, where it's so important to be able to have that dialogue with police and actually have that honest, candid, transparent dialogue, because when you can have that conversation, you can hold them accountable, as well as you can be partners in solving problems, because police are not always at odds with the community. Sometimes it becomes misinformation, but if you're not having these conversations, if you're not facilitating these conversations, and if you're not pushing and holding the police to be accountable on these conversations, how can you possibly do it? This last week, I was driving down Central Parkway, and we as a city have just invested a bunch of money to make it one lane on both sides. and a police car pulled around a metro bus that had stopped, completely defeating the purpose of the reason why we had just invested all this money. Even things like that, we have to hold police accountable for, and we have to be transparent with that problem such that it can get corrected, because when they start to do that, it tells others that it's not serious. This is really, really important, where the community engagement has to come in, and how we can put that at the forefront of everything we're doing.
That is time. Thank you. Anna?
Yeah, thanks for this question. I'll just add too, because I saw Mary Kate on here, who is head of the League of Women Voters here locally. League of Women Voters had us do a series of video interview questions all around this topic. So if someone wants to dig in more, I point you in that direction. So yes, piggybacking off of what Councilmember Walsh said, the work the city has done through the collaborative agreement and making sure with the Citizens Complaint Authority is phenomenal. It's really helped shape our police force to being best in class across the nation. With that said, we need to continue to invest in training programs like EPIC and making sure EPIC is ethical policing is courageous, making sure that we are continuing to invest in programs that emphasize de-escalation when it comes to conflict resolution. Earlier in the call, someone mentioned ARC, the Alternative Response to Crisis. I think that is also another phenomenal addition to the work we're doing here around policing, because that means that we are having mental health professionals show up to situations that are nonviolent, folks who can help have that conversation and de-escalate things. Furthermore, I think when we talk about gun violence prevention and being in the community, just having our police present and community policing, walking the beat, being with our community is so important to be able to get back to that and making sure we are fostering strong relationships between the community and our police, I think is absolutely vital.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, so from my perspective, the way that I hear the question or reframe the question is like, how will we continue to uphold, support, and ensure that the collaborative agreement and all areas of the collaborative agreement are fully implemented, including problem solving across all areas of city government? I think one of the things that we do when we talk about policing in the city of Cincinnati is that we apply national narrative to what's happening in the city. Our accountability systems and the way that we work with our police department is a national model that is effective and it is working, right? And so we often, I think, then say like, oh, well, we just have to make sure that all of these things that are happening in around the country are not happening in Cincinnati. It's like, and they're not to a large extent because of those tenets, because of Citizens Complaint Authority, because of problem solving, because of the relationship between the department and the unions and the managers advisory group. And so I just say that to say that the approach for us is not that we have to solve all of these larger issues that other cities are seeing, but making sure that elected leaders and administrators and the communities know that there are pathways and that there are areas of accountability that are already existing, that are funded, that they can work, and we have to use them, refer to them, and engage those systems in order to maintain and increase the level of police accountability in our city.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
I think it's been talked about, and it's crystal clear that we, because of the collaborative agreement, we are leading the country when it comes to police community relations. But I think we have to make sure that we don't give away our power as tax-paying citizens in this city. The tax-paying citizens in this city are the ones that really dictate the pace and the influence that moves this city. And I think sometimes that gets marginalized to believe that we as city council people hold all the authority and power, or the police hold all the power and authority. You, the taxpayer, hold the power and authority. And that's something that should never, ever be surrendered. But we've come a long way in Cincinnati, having spent 33 years as a Cincinnati police officer. We've come a long way, but we're not there yet. We have to continue to make sure that equal power is distributed to the citizens when it comes to learning what citizens need and want in their community. And when that takes place, then therefore we will continuously work on transparency, and we will continuously work on making sure accountability is at the forefront in this relationship, because we are talking about a relationship. Thank you.
Councilmember Keating?
Yeah, I think number one is taking the data from CCA and being able to work with the police department to come up with preventative measures so that we can reduce the number of complaints. Number two is being able to build strong positive relationships with our police department in our neighborhoods, and particularly our youth. And I'm going to give an example. The last 2 summers, I've volunteered as a lifeguard at Evanston and Hirsch Rec Centers. We have had many situations where teens are showing up with weapons and getting in fights. These are situations that 15-year-old lifeguards cannot handle. But calling police officers is not always the best situation at a pool to be able to deal with this. So we did, inspired by Iris Rowley's suggestion of problem solving, we worked with the city manager's office and the police department to figure out how to handle this. And we decided this past summer to work with our school resource officers who know these teenagers, who have relationships with these teenagers. And when we had situations where kids showed up with weapons and we had fights going on, we could call the school resource officers. And let me tell you what happened. Those school resource officers showed up and they sat down and they spoke to every child and they knew the kids' names. And they were giving high fives and having good, deep conversations. And every little child at the pool was watching that interaction, and it was a positive interaction. And so we went from a situation that could have been very dangerous to a situation that was very positive and had a wonderful outcome and ended with hugs and high fives and everyone happy and everyone safe. Being able to problem solve like that and create much better situations is how we move forward.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes, thank you. Everything's been said. It comes down to the tenets of the collaborative agreement. Of course, the Citizens Complaint Authority is an important component to that, and the patterns report that they do. And so now that we have been addressing the backlog, it's now making sure we are using that patterns report to actually do the intervening based on the recommendations that need to happen. So what do we need to unlock and uncover to be able to do that? It's also about the opportunities of community-oriented policing that we know work to get to the problem solving, but it's also culture within the department. And so as a climate assessment is being wrapped up within that department, it's also being able to hold leadership accountable to implementing in the interventions of that report, because culture is certainly important in that department. And it's and this is something that we will be able to talk about in the next year.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Parks.
Thank you. I'm going to build on what Councilmember Owen said. First of all, this council has paid a lot of attention to it, and we simply insist upon transparency. Councilmember Johnson led the way where we will not tolerate disrespect within this police department, and they will be held accountable. I came across this at the county within the resolution that declared racism a public health crisis. The sheriff's office adopted the ABLE program that Anna talked about, and it's an active bystandership for law enforcement that will help policemen learn how to step in if they see fellow law enforcement acting in an inappropriate way. It's really important. The program teaches bystanders to be used in 3 settings: learn how to intervene to prevent misconduct, learn how to intervene to prevent a mistake, and learn how to intervene to promote your colleagues' health and wellness. This goes hand in hand with the collaborative agreement, and I think it will be a perfect fit. I've been campaigning for this, and I would like for the Cincinnati Police Department to adopt it.
That is time. Thank you. So I see that Mayor Jan Michelle Lemon Kearney and Councilmember Mark Jeffries have been able to join us. So
You know,
welcome.
hi, we're actually, can you
You're
see
good,
Mark?
you're fine, you're
Okay,
good.
you can see Mark, okay.
I can see those.
We're still in this meeting, but we didn't want you to think we forgot about you. So we just wanted to say hello. There's still something going on here and we apologize for that. But
Okay, what we wanted to do was give you each 90 seconds to introduce yourselves. Does that
what?
work?
You want to have 90 seconds to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All right, awesome. First of all, thank you. We're at a community forum in Lower Price Hill. There was a 3-year-old kid who was hit by a car. And so we came out for this, so apologize. But so yes, Mark Jeffries, first term on council, like many of my colleagues. My just very quick background, I grew up in New York. And so I'm a transplant here, went to New York City Public Schools, worked my way through college and construction, and then went on to University of Chicago and Georgetown, came here 23 years ago for P&G, spent 17 years there, worked in a community council, was on the Park Foundation board and ran for council because I believe we needed new leadership. So my focus is on what I call safer, cleaner, greener, a lot of pedestrian safety, hence we're here at this forum. Which is a major issue in the city. The clean, a big focus on removing lead, paint, lead pipes, cleaning up our city, the litter in our city, and green, a big focus on public transit, active transportation, other forms of transportation other than cars, since 30% of our city does not own a car. So those are some of the focus areas for me. Truly apologize. I've been texting Denisha, like, we can't get out of this meeting and the vice mayor here. So I really ask for your understanding. So thank you. And I'll turn it over to the vice mayor so she can say her part. Thank you again.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I'm Jan Michelle Lemon Kearney, and I'm from Cincinnati. I grew up in Avondale, went to Cincinnati Public Schools, went to Rockdale and Walnut Hills High School, went on to Dartmouth College and Harvard Law School. And I'm a mom and a business person. I own the Cincinnati Herald newspaper. We do a lot of events like I think our biggest is the Daddy Daughter Dinner Dance with about 1,200 people every year at the Duke Energy Convention Center. So, I know the struggles of running a business. Anyway, in 2020, I was appointed to city council to fill a vacant seat and was elected in 2021 and then appointed vice mayor in 2022. So I'm here today with Mark. Mark has done a great job with pedestrian safety. And this was a meeting, as he said, about that, where it's about community engagement, which is really my thing. When I got on council, I helped to pass an ordinance for community engagement because I felt that, the previous culture was just not to ask the community, what do you want? What do you need? And the culture has changed. And this council is so different than others because they're really, everybody here is so good about engaging. And so issues I've been working on, gun violence is a big one. Affordable housing and really home ownership in that space is super important to me. And then equitable development, which President Pro Tem Victoria Parks and I have worked on. I want to thank All In for all you've done and just look forward to continuing that partnership going forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So will you two be leaving us for your meeting?
Yeah, we're still here. It's still going. People are still here going. It's still happening. We've been here since 3 o'clock, and
Right.
actually a little before, and it's still going on. So I think we won't be able to stay in here with the all-in candidates forum. And so as Mark does, I totally apologize for that.
No worries. Thank you so much for stopping in.
All right, you guys are really important to us, and so we just wanted you to know we didn't forget about it. We're just this just a scheduling issue. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So everyone, we have time for one more question for the candidates. We're going to start with Anna Albee. So earlier this year, the city released its financial freedom blueprint. piloting 3 programs to address poverty and economic disparities: guaranteed basic income, medical debt relief, and child savings accounts. Do you support this plan, and how, as a council member, will you monitor its success? And how do you envision the blueprint impacting Black women in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think overall the plan and the intention of the plan is really, really solid. I wanted to focus briefly on the medical debt relief. My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2020, and I remember she went through all the treatments and everything. And at one point, she took a picture of the invoice she got sent. And although she had insurance coverage, which was great, at the very top, it said the cost of her total treatment was just shy of $1 million. And to me, very fundamentally, there is no price I wouldn't pay to save my mother's life, to make sure she got the treatment she needed. And I just don't think anyone should be put in a position where they're having to choose between paying rent and paying for life-saving medical care. So I am a big, big supporter of that, especially when medical debt is being sold for pennies on the dollar when it comes to debt relief. So I think that is an absolutely great piece of that blueprint. I think the investing into the baby bonds, I think is the colloquial term, in trying to break that cycle, that generational cycle of poverty, is also a really great piece of this. And especially, again, when you think about in the city of Cincinnati, communities that have been left behind by previous economic development, or frankly, simply bulldozed in the past, we need to make sure we're leveraging that. So I overall support the ideals behind the blueprint. And I think it's important that we do follow the data to make sure it's having the impact we want.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris, please.
Well, I support it. I helped champion the work, specifically guaranteed income. So yes, fully. The ensuring its impact is really about the monitoring the specific outcomes. And so that's why we're working with All In the Urban League and our Office of Performance and Data Analytics to make sure that we're measuring the impact that we want to have. And the real blueprint is, again, centering Black women, because one is what the data tells us. Two, we know that when Black women are experience economic mobility, social mobility, all of the ways in which one can be mobile, it impacts whole communities. So yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Fully support the effort, and thank you to my colleagues that led that effort. We're talking about circumstances sometimes that we just don't plan for, especially when it comes to medical crisis. And I think everybody on this call probably at one time or another may have had to deal with a medical situation that was completely unexpected, that may have caused a setback financially. So everything that we can do to make sure that people are made whole, one, and then get some level of uplift, especially our dear Black women, to get some level of uplift as when it comes to these life situations, I'm 100% supportive of. When it comes to making sure that young people, I think Anna talked about baby bonds. When we talk about baby bonds, that is something that gives people a head start. And we're talking about trying to equal a playing field somewhat that has been completely unequal since we landed on these shores here. So those are things that speak to some level of equity, and I support it wholeheartedly, but we've got so much more work to do to make sure equity is at the forefront of every piece of legislation.
Thank you. Councilmember Owens.
Yes, I absolutely support these type of innovative things from the city. And it's exciting that we have the opportunity to do these things, particularly as some cities that are not so earnings tax based have been able to use ARPA dollars to do these transformative things like access to counsel, putting $10 million there and these sorts of programs, because we know that when we're talking about decreasing the wealth gap, these are things that are we know can work. And so what is written into the plan is Councilmember Harris leading on this is certainly centering Black women in that. We know that the data research, all of the things tell us that those are the, Black women are the people we certainly need to be hyper investing in. And certainly with anything, making sure that we have goals and accountability that are laid out and being able to look back to see what the progress was and did we achieve is always important. And so, yes, very excited to be supportive of this work in the city.
Great. President Pro Tem Parks.
Yes, thank you. This program is just awesome. I'm so excited about it. How creative, how out of the box thinking, and this demonstrates where this council's heart is. If you look at a government body's budget, that will tell you where their heart lies. And we've invested in the future. We've invested in babies, in women. I have personal experience myself talking about a surprise medical event. I've had it, and as a younger woman, I had to file bankruptcy. So I know for sure how it will affect you and affect your finances, and just throw you in a completely different stress level and just the way you're dealing with. Women are the caretakers. So more than anything, if it's not them, then it's their children, and they are accumulating the medical bills. So what this council, with this administration, with Councilman Harris's help is, I believe that we have looked under the covers and seen what will really help a family. I'm really proud of it.
Okay, and Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not going to repeat what everyone else has said. I think they were also spot on. When I was appointed to council, this was one of the things I was most excited to kind of learn about and to see that we were already putting our money where our mouth was. So many of you on this call were really instrumental in making it a reality. So thank you for your leadership in pushing that forward. This financial freedom blueprint and the steps that we are taking already through our city budget, I think can have really, really transformational impacts on the city of Cincinnati. Back to an earlier story I talked about, when we talk about helping small businesses, and then we talk about helping Black businesses in particular, but we say they're always they're starting behind the 8 ball. And we get them just enough to catch up with their peers, and then we leave them behind. I think that's how the city's often acted. I think with the financial freedom blueprint, we're actually for the first time saying, like, let's recognize the problem and really solve the problem. This council's really made it a priority. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to be able to see how these pilots come out. And I suspect we'll be doing more than pilots in the years to come, because this can really have such a transformational impact on the entire city of Cincinnati, because especially when Black women are thriving, the whole city's thriving.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for answers to these questions. We have just a little bit more time to give you each 1 minute for a closing statement. Councilmember Walsh, will you start us off with the closing statements?
Yeah, thank you guys for your time tonight, or afternoon. I think it's still afternoon. It has been a blast to be with you guys. These are some really incredible questions, being able to allow us to dive in deep on some policies we don't usually get to talk about too much. I'm really excited, and I've been honored to have spent the last year on Cincinnati City Council. I hope to earn your vote to be able to have another term here on City Council. The work that we did in College Hill should not be unique to College Hill. It should be something that we can do all around the city of Cincinnati. Every neighborhood deserves to see their vision come to life, and that vision doesn't mean the corners of Hamilton North Bend, but it does mean that the neighborhood's vision comes to life, and those that are part of it at the front end should be part of it on the back end when success comes. we had that success in College Hill. I want to bring that success to the city of Cincinnati. I really appreciate everyone's help tonight. It's great to chat with you all, and I hope to earn your vote. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. President Pro Tem Parks.
Thank you. It's been such an honor to represent my city for this past 2 years. I love my team. I think everybody knows that I refer to us as a baseball team. And what happens is not everybody pitches at the same time. Not everybody is up to bat at the same time. Reggie may be playing left field and Scotty's a shortstop, but we all play our positions, and it is what makes it work. We are a team, and I hope to stay together. We've accomplished a lot. I'm so proud of it. I really am. This is, I've worked my entire life, but the work that we get done here is, my mother would say, we saying something. And I hope that the community agrees with me. I hope to earn your vote, but I also want you to vote my teammates back in.
Thank you. Councilmember Owens.
Yes, it's been a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon. I'm excited about the work that we've done as a council and the opportunity to get back into City Hall and continue to build on that work. I truly believe, as I stated earlier, that there are strength in numbers, and we are a well-resourced city to get these things done. But it requires all of us who are here. We need thought partners and leaders from City Hall, just like you all need us to lead on policies and the things that we can enact. But sometimes it's about convening around issues. And so I'm really excited to continue these conversations with many of you that are on this call. At the top of my list that we didn't talk much of, but traverses all of the things that we are talking about, is definitely climate justice and climate equity and the impact that it has on everything around transportation, mental health, housing, the quality of housing that we have, reducing utility bills as a result of climate change. And so keeping that at the forefront of our mind in everything that we do, making sure that we are building communities where people can walk out and have plenty of access to green space. And we are certainly making investments in communities that need it the most. So excited to be able to serve Cincinnati in that way.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Let me say thank you, ladies. Greatly appreciate this opportunity. It's been a pleasure working for the citizens of Cincinnati this last 2 years, and prayerfully I will be graced with the opportunity to continue to serve. The one thing that I want everybody to know is the fact that I will never cheat the citizens of Cincinnati. Despite standing alone, if I have to, I will make sure that you are fully represented. When it comes to making sure that the needle's being moved in Cincinnati, equity it must be the number one focused point when it comes to every piece of legislation that we bring forth. And we've tried to make sure that happen. That is why, we care down there. We don't have all the answers, but with the help of groups like this and all the citizens, we will get it done. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you all in Cincinnati. We have said a lot of words in our time together. I'm also beyond honored to be a team member on President Pro Tem Parks' baseball team. I think that might have been the first time in my life I was chosen first for a sporting event. So I'm moving up in the world. I'm going to continue to do the work. And I do the work with all of my colleagues on council and with many of you on the call. And that has been my MO from day one, and that will continue to be my MO. And so we know what we need to do. We know the solutions. We have the data. It's just about strategically moving forward. So I just look forward to continue to build with you all.
Thank you. And Anna, please.
Yeah, well, thank you all for having me. I am the one non-incumbent running, so I'm the fresh face, and I appreciate you all giving me the opportunity to join you today. Hopefully what you heard from me is that I'm laser focused on tackling gun violence prevention and the systemic issues that will help foster safer communities. Separate from that, my day job, I'm a communication professional. That means I spend my whole day talking to clients about problems and talking to subject matter experts about solutions, implementing those solutions and communicating it back. And to me, that is the basic job of a good lawmaker. You talk with your residents, your constituents, you find out the problems, you work with the subject matter experts to figure out the solutions, and then you work together to implement them and communicate it back. I see you all as both subject matter experts and key stakeholders in those conversations as we not only do the work, but communicate that back out to the community. And I hope to bring those skills, that experience to City Council to serve you. Thank you all so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you all again, and I will turn it over to Denisha.
Thank you so much, Alicia. You did a great job, and thank you so much for the candidates. Just give everybody a round of applause. It was wonderful. I would like to thank the partners one last time. So that is the Women's Fund, the League of Women Voters, Urban League of Greater Southwestern Ohio, the Health Collaborative, BI3, Cincy Black Travel, Youth at the Center, and Women's City Club. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, this was our last meeting of the year, but I will be sending stuff out over the next 2 months for you still to engage in All in Cincinnati. Thank you for joining us today. And remember, honor, celebrate, and love Black women. Till next time. Bye.
Together now.